Facts on Scotland. Scotland is home to the tallest waterfall in Britain, named Bees A Shulau Alanon. It is 658 feet, which is 3 times the height of Niagara Falls. Scotland has approximately 790 islands. Scotland is home to the oldest tree in Europe. It is twisted yew, and it's been around for 3 million years. Edinburgh was the first city in the world to have its own fire brigade. There are 600 square miles of freshwater lakes. The highest population of redness are in Scotland. St. Andrews Links is known the home of golf. Even though Edinburgh is the capital, it's not the largest city. Glasgow is the largest. The raincoat was invented in Scotland by a man named Charles McIntosh, who was born in Glasgow. Fun facts about Scotland that might surprise you. Travelers look very different right now depending on where you form. When you're going to be sure, check local restrictions and be willing to adhere any all safety regulations before planning a trip of any places you may read about in this site. Also, some posts on this site contain affiliate links, meaning if you book or buy something throughout the links, I may earn a small commission. When people ask me about my favorite place in the world, it's Scotland is always near the top of my list. The surprising many people, I guess maybe Scotland isn't exotic enough for most people to assume it would be favorite, but to me Scotland has everything I love in a destination. It's beautiful from its lowland clues to the Highland Lochs to its many isles. It's also home to the Loch Ness Monster called Nessie. The people are warm and friendly. It's easy to get around and the tourists, and those Scottish accents don't hurt either. I also love that Scotland's just dripping in history. I'm a big history nerd. So the fact that I learn something new every time I visit draws me back to Scotland again and again. Here are some fun facts about Scotland. Is Scotland really a country? So let's get this one out of the way. I really cite Scotland is one of the person's favorite countries. Technically speaking, Scotland is not an independent country. It's part of Great Britain and the United Kingdom. Great Britain is made up of England, Wales, and Scotland, while the UK full official name is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. People have lived in Scotland for millennia, but the Kingdom of Scotland didn't emerge until the Middle Ages. Around in the early 1600s, King James V of Scotland also became King of England and Ireland, but it wasn't until 1707 that an official political union was formed by the creation of the Kingdom of Great Britain. Scotland would then go through a period where it's lost a lot of power to the new Parliament of Great Britain, and the UK monarchy It was until 1997 that Scotland was able to form its own independent parliament again. Today, Scotland still uses the British pound, though don't they they do print their own banknotes through the Bank of Scotland and only have limited self-governing powers. Scottish people also carry UK passports, and the UN recognizes it as part of the United Kingdom. You'll find British famous red boxes too, but to consider Scotland to be its own entity, Scotland has its own characters, its own history. Of course, increasingly talk of independence in recent years, so while it's not technically a country, you still treat it in mind. The mighty unicorn. Perhaps the favorite Scotland fun fact is national animal is a unicorn. The unicorn has been a symbol of Scotland for centuries, and the reason behind this perfectly captures the Scottish spirit. England has always been represented by a lion, and if you know anything about the history of Great Britain, you'll know that England and Scotland has been at odds, and sometimes literally at war. Throughout history and old myths, guess which animal was said to be only one that could defeat a lion? Yup, a unicorn. Scotland's royal coat of arms used to feature two unicorns. Today, Royal Coat of Arms of the United Kingdom still represents Scotland with a unicorn. The water of life. Scotland is known around the world for single malt whiskey, usually just known as Scotch. But while most people associate Scotland with whiskey, it wasn't invented there like many people assume. Distillation is not a new process. In fact, people all the way back in Mesopotamia and ancient Greece were distilling things in order to produce perfumes. The distillation of alcohol was first recorded in Europe, where monasteries distilled it, where the wine used to be used mostly for medical purposes. This is how the process first arrived in Ireland, where true whiskey distillation, making alcohol from distilled grains, was invented in the early 1400s. Before making its way over to Scotland, the more whiskey in fact comes from Old Irish usis, bifa, which translates to the water of life. Ireland, home to the oldest white licensed whiskey distilled in the world, Old Bushmills Distillery, which receives a license in 1608, but Scotland has perhaps become even more synonymous with the water of life than any other country. In order for whiskey to be Scotch, it has to be distilled in Scotland from water and malt barley and be aged for a minimum of 3 years in oak barrel. There's lots of other technical requirements, but those are the main ones. Today, Scotland has more than 125 whiskies distilleries in 6 different whiskey regions. Some of the most famous are Speyside homes to the official malt whiskey trail and Islay home to the incredible peaty whiskey. A country of islands. Scotland inhabits part of island of Great Britain, but did you know that itself has more than 900 offshore islands of its own? Not all of these islands are inhabited or even visible, but many of them are islands. Hopping in Scotland is therefore very popular and highly recommended. Scotland islands are divided up into the Inner Hebrides, Outer Hebrides, Orkney Island, and Shetland Island. In Outer Hebrides, your island, like the Isle of Lewis and Harris, Barra, and the Isle of St. Callida, in the Inner Hebrides, you find Islay and its whiskey Consay, the Isle of Lona, Staffa, famous for puffins and Fingal caves, the Isle of Mull, the famous Isle of Skye, and both the Orkneys and Shetlands are home ruins of ancient settlements with Viking ties. The shortest commercial flight in the world. Because of all little islands dotted all over Scotland, is home to the world's shortest commercial passenger flight. The flight runs between two of the Orkney Islands, West Bray and Papa Westway, which lie 1.7 miles apart. The flight, operated by Loganair, is officially only 2 minutes long. Loganair runs flight mostly for local islanders, but is flown multiple times per week in small 8-seater planes. Tickets can be bought for low as €14 and 50 shillings return. Another Scottish Isle flight to put your bucket list is flight that flies to the island of Barra. The flight is unique because of the airport runway on Barra, just stretch of beach. Why so many redheads? Scotland has one of the highest population of red-haired people in the world. Worldwide, less than 2% of people have red hair in Scotland. Throughout the percentage of somewhere between 6% and 13%, depending on the source. Even cows are redheads. Red hair is far more common across northern European countries than it's anywhere else in the world. Some assume this is because of northern Europe Viking history. The Vikings made their way to most of the nations that today have larger head populations, but the real reason is actually much more fascinating and based on science. People with red hair are able to produce vitamin D more effectively, helping them thrive in places with less sunlight. How freaking cool is that? Home to Harry Potter. Speaking of the redheads, the most famous red-headed family in literature has ties to Scotland, the Wesleys, along the other Harry Potter characters with brainchild of Scottish author J.K. Rowling.